Okay, fantastic. All right, good evening, everyone. And I think we've got a few signed in, and I think there's a couple that are still going to be making their way in. But welcome, everyone, to the September edition of the Startup Scarborough monthly webinar. My name is Bryson Dodge, and I'm one of the program directors with Startup Scarborough. And joining me here this evening is my colleague Janice Waugh, who's another program director with the Startup Scarborough program, as well as Suman Roy, who is the chair of Feed Scarborough. We'll give each of them a chance to introduce themselves shortly, but wanted to first let everybody know that these webinars are run on a monthly basis. These webinars are designed to foster entrepreneurism in residents of Scarborough. Two quick items of housekeeping. One, please note that these webinars are being recorded and will be posted online. So if anybody that you know who was looking to attend was not able to, they'll be able to find them online. And as well, if you're going to be participating and there's some noise in the background, if you could please just make sure that you put yourself on mute whenever you're not speaking. Our agenda for this evening, we've got a fantastic guest speaker with us here this evening. We have Sarah Garcia from the Side Hustle Caterer, and Sarah is going to be joined by Janice Waugh in just a moment for a fireside chat on all things Side Hustle Caterer, including Sarah's journey through to entrepreneurism. Following that chat, we will have a question and answer period. And so if you've got any questions, there will be two ways that you can ask questions. You can either use the raise hand function on Zoom, and that can be accessed by hitting the more button at the bottom and then selecting reactions and hitting raise hand. At that point, I'll call upon you and you can pose your question to Sarah or Janice directly. Alternatively, you can use the chat function in Zoom and you can type your question in either to everyone, or if you wanted to send it to someone specifically, you're certainly welcome to do that. And so without any further ado, we'll jump right into it. And I'm going to invite Suman Roy, chair of the Scarborough Food Security Initiative, to perform the land acknowledgement and introduce Janice.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Before I start, I'm going to start with the land acknowledgement. The land that we are standing on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Scarborough is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. In Canada, 48% of First Nation households have difficulty putting enough food on the table. This is due to the higher price for healthy food in remote communities and poverty in urban centers. Feed Scarborough is on a mission to end hunger in Scarborough, and that includes supporting our Indigenous neighbors. We will continue to look for ways to work with Indigenous Scarborough residents, many of which are stewards of this beautiful land and leaders in the fight for food justice. For those who don't know, Feed Scarborough or Scarborough Food Security Initiative is a local charity who runs 4 food banks, soup kitchen, and various programs like community kitchens, StartUp Scarborough, and the vaccine awareness program for the city of Toronto. One such event is coming up on this Saturday, the 13th, and it is at, Saturday is 11th. Saturday, the 11th of September. It is from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. It is happening at 3595 St. Clair Avenue East, which is right at Danforth Road and St. Clair Avenue. It's celebrating urban agriculture in the city of Toronto. We'll have a lot of fun games for children. We'll have food. We have stalls from various local vendors, live music, live bands all through, kids making pizzas, learn about composting, growing in your backyard. Come and have fun. Hope to see you all. And before much ado, I'm going to pass it over to Janice. Janice is one of the lead for Startup Scarborough program and one of the person who really brainchild this whole program and created it. So Janice, thank you for all your help and take it away.
Thanks so much, Suman. Yes, it's starting to hail where I am. in Scarborough, of course. I don't know if that's happening there. I'm just hoping the power is not going to go out because it's had it twice in the last week. So yeah, we'll just cross our fingers on that one. My name is Janice Waugh, and I am what is often referred to as a serial entrepreneur. I've had 3 businesses, and my current business is a travel blog that I've been running for 12 years now. I have the great pleasure of getting to interview our entrepreneur. Today we have Sarah Garcia, the side hustling caterer. And she's on a mission to make plant-based or vegetarian food interesting and to answer the questions that she always gets asked when meeting people, but where do you get your protein? And as a vegan, I get asked that question a lot too. I get it. Sarah is the daughter of a Chilean political refugee and a Canadian Jewish mom. She's also a mom herself of an awesome 11-year-old son and a 5-month-old puppy. A busy household. Her hobbies include cooking, salsa dancing, walking, reading, and this year more than ever, Netflix. I think that's in common with a lot of people. She previously ran a family-owned all-day breakfast cafe in Kensington Market and an events catering business. And then she took a break from food to turn to the nonprofit sector as the director of programs for a pre-apprenticeship trades-based program at an organization called Building Up. But Sarah still found that her heart was dreaming of recipes and fresh produce and nourishing meals. And so she made the leap to turn her spare time and energy back to where her heart lay and launched Side Hustle Catering Toronto in the summer of 2021. So it's new, which is great because we can learn about how that leap was taken. So Sarah, welcome. And thank you for joining us. Thank you so much
for having me. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have you here.
Yeah.
So I've prepared a few questions for you. Mm-hmm. And the first would be, I think, your elevator pitch. So when someone asks you, like for the 30 seconds, what is your side hustle? What do you say?
Yeah, I can do it in under 30 seconds. It's straightforward. So really, Side Hustle Catering is, we offer I offer vegetarian food that's globally inspired and ideally as locally sourced as possible ingredients, and really that make you feel, I had a client describe it as bougie on a budget. And I think that that's kind of what I often aspire to be, is to present meals that are a bit different, a bit exciting, visually appealing, that maybe make people feel special, when they're eating them. That it's not just another takeout, it's a decent, healthy, happy alternative to Uber Eats, that so many people have sort of succumbed to that habit over the last year and a half, especially for those that have been able to afford it. So really, that's the pitch. That's what it's all about, is creating healthy, inspiring, nourishing meals for people that are really plant-based, really drawing on, the language that we hear so much in the media these days around plant-based alternatives, plant-based eating. So I sat back and thought about it, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's me. That's what I do. That's how I eat. And so, just really trying to answer those questions for people.
That sounds amazing. I love the global and the local aspect of it. Mm-hmm. Right. That's really wonderful. And with, of course, your diverse background. Right?
Yeah, there's so many cultures to draw from. Yeah, and not only that, but I married into a family that is Kenyan East Indian background. So there's also that whole element as well, which has been really lovely to be exposed to food that I didn't necessarily grow up with either. My mom became a vegetarian around 17 years old, but I was raised a vegetarian. And so she's just an incredible cook, and she really tried hard throughout our entire lives to make vegetarian food interesting, and different. So yeah, it really obviously rubbed off in a really great way.
So food was obviously a big part of your household growing up. So that's,
Totally.
this is pretty much your backstory, right?
Yeah.
But why catering? Well, when did you, like, you've
Yeah.
catered, you've done catering before, and now the side hustle is catering. So why catering?
For me personally, catering, I find I can control. I can control it a lot better than a restaurant, right? A restaurant, you can guess how many clients, or customers you might have in that day, but you're dealing with produce, you're dealing with potential waste, and all those kind of elements, people not walking through your door. With catering, I find it really helpful because you can control how many clients you have and what you're offering. And so I just find it a really helpful way to manage my own everything, like time, and to be able to plan. I'm a planner. I like to plan and be organized if I can. And catering just seemed to be a really good fit in that sense.
So, okay, so all of that makes sense.
Yeah.
What made you to decide to go for it on a side hustle basis? Like what was the tipping point where you went, yeah, okay, I'm going to do this?
Yeah, it's something that I fell into, to be quite, transparent. So about a year and a half ago, I started cooking for coworkers. I was noticing they were jealous of the lunches that I was bringing into the office, and they weren't bringing lunches in for themselves, and they weren't eating very well. They were often, would go off to kind of source whatever was around the office, which was often Mr. Noodles or whatever it was, which are delicious. Love them for sure. And there's ways to jazz Mr. Noodles up, most definitely. But yeah, it started really just from that, is saying, hey, you know what, for probably around the same price that you're spending on your coffee in the morning or your Mr. Noodles or whatever it might be, I could probably offer you some pretty exciting alternatives that you're not used to. And so it started from there, and really word of mouth, it just spread. Like it spread amongst friends and community, and that's kind of how it all began. You mentioned in the intro that I dream of recipes. Food excites me. It's not uncommon if I'm ordering food at a restaurant for my eyes to get teary if a waiter is describing something to me. Like I get really jazzed. I get really excited about food in general. And so it was just, I just felt now would be the time. I'm doing it anyway. I'm helping out my friends and my coworkers. So let's see if we can take this sort of to the next level and see where we can go with it. Completely a crazy idea given the time, really nervous to launch something during COVID, so that part has been interesting. But it comes from a place also of wanting to push myself. It's been a really tough year for a lot of people. I was feeling stagnant. My day job is extremely rewarding. I love what I do, but I needed something that fed my soul and made me happy. And it just happens to be that feeding people and ingredients makes me happy. So I was like, let's do it. Let's see how it goes.
And that's the great thing about a side hustle, right? Is that it comes from the heart.
Yeah.
Right. That's usually where a good side hustle comes from. It's something that you really love doing. And I love the fact that you started with just by feeding your colleagues.
Yeah.
And it goes from there. So then you had to decide, okay, I'm going to actually take this farther afield. And you had to promote yourself. You had to get a name, right? Yeah. And I don't know what else. So tell us what you did after you decided, okay, I'm going to take this beyond my colleagues.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not the most creative, lyrical person. And so when I was trying to think of a business name, really I decided on, Side Hustle Catering, because that's really what it is. It's a side hustle. And so it immediately occurred to me that, I find, especially over this last year, that social media is where it's at. It's a helpful free marketing tool. So I immediately grabbed up an Instagram page with that handle. and started posting the pictures that I just naturally take of the food that I make as a first step to kind of populate the page. And then from there, I actually created a free website using Wix, and I still use it. I haven't upgraded yet. I've been back and forth about it, but I just use their basic website, and I taught myself how to put it together. It's fairly, I want to say fairly intuitive, but nah, like I've had to troubleshoot a lot. It is challenging. It does help to know people that feel somewhat comfortable with technology. You know, I've drawn on friends and family and coworkers that kind of are comfortable in that realm. So yeah, and I just, you know, have used that tool mainly and just ensured, for me in my experience, I have a lot of background in sort of customer care, frontline work, and it was important for me to do the follow-up with my clients, to show them that I'm not just dropping off food to you, but I actually care about the quality that I'm dropping off. I care about your feedback. Your feedback helps inform my business, helps inform recipes and what you might want to see down the road. So there's a lot that I've found has gone into it in a short amount of time in building this type of business. And you know, I'm rambling now, but I think the biggest lesson too is just like not to be afraid of failure. That's something that inherently I'm not comfortable with, right? I'm not comfortable pushing myself and going outside of my comfort zone. But just taking that deep breath and diving in and saying, I'm gonna try this and see how it goes. Like I'm invested to it, you know, I'm invested because it's important to me. And I'm just gonna see.
Right. And that's the thing about a side hustle.
Mhm.
That it doesn't have to feed your family for the next, you know,
That's
year.
right.
It's something that you can build slowly.
Yeah, I mean, if it did, that would be great.
Well, and that's potentially the next stage. But at the beginning,
Yeah.
yeah, you take one step at a time. And it sounds like when you say that you've got a basic Wix site, you're really doing it on a shoestring. You're doing it smart. That you don't have to spend everything at the beginning. You don't have to be your end goal when you start out.
Yeah, I started out with very little, just financially, you know, like I went to, there's a store on Spadina, Tapfong, which like often, so Spadina and Dundas area, Chinatown, very well known for supplying restaurants. And you know, I started off with, I want to say maybe like $200 max, just in terms of like, you know, the supplies that I'd already had, getting some good takeout containers, and, you know, paper bags and the basics that I would need to deliver, and not putting that pressure on myself, which I find I often can do, right, is just to be perfect, like right off the bat. See how it goes. Oh, wow, that's big thunder there. It's over here too. Yeah. So yeah, I started out with very little, you know, in terms of startup cash, but lucky enough to have a little extra in my back pocket to invest, for sure. It was helpful.
I love the idea that you follow up with your customers, because there's that saying that, you know, it costs more to get a new customer than it is to get a repeat customer. And is that what you're finding?
Yes, all of my customers have been pretty much there from the first few weeks, and they're repeats. Like it's been lovely because they're ordering weekly now. You know, I do more than just, so I do a bunch of different things, but one of the things I do is just a weekly meal delivery. So lunch or dinner mainly, and they're individual portions for now, and with the option to kind of like upgrade to a family size, right? But I find that, you know, the people that I work with that are my clients are people that want an alternative to, like, you know, what they've been making at home. They might want to try this plant-based thing, you know, that they've been hearing about. And they've all been repeat customers. Yeah, pretty much from the beginning, which is really nice. And it's grown as well over the last couple weeks, months. But yeah, it's really great to see. We have a relationship. It actually helps inform the menus because I have a sense of their taste buds, what they're going to go for, what they're not going to go for. So I don't do anything too out of the box, too crazy. But I have found it important to offer some variety in terms of what I do. So that's been important as well, right? To be able to offer things, for example, that are vegan, some vegan options, some options that do include dairy. I always try and offer a tofu because I find that people, especially people that aren't used to eating tofu, don't know what it's about and have had bad experiences often with it. So I like to offer a tofu option per week because it just opens people's minds. Yeah, it's really cool.
So I'm trying to get a handle on, the control side of things.
Yeah.
We've got weekly meals going to people.
Yeah.
How many items can they select from for their meal so that to contain things from your labor side of things, as well as your costs?
So I only offer 4 options a week.
Okay.
So yeah, and often what'll happen is they might double up on something, or they might purchase something for their roommate or for their partner, whoever it might be. So they're just ordering 4 options. And at first it really was trial and error, like to balance out my time and costs. Like I'm not good at selling myself. I'm not good at charging, for things. I come from like a communist socialist household. Like, we're not comfy with that kind of stuff, and so it was a learning process. My prices started out really, really affordable to the clientele that I was working with. And that was the feedback I got. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, if you think this is affordable, I'm going to up it a bit because I can, because you're telling me that you can pay more for this. Right. And so I'm going to charge more for this. And so it took a lot of trial and error to kind of see what made the most sense. So for sure, I'd say in the beginning, I was like breaking even, but happy to do so, right? Because you're testing the waters, you're seeing what clientele you can get. And then, yeah, just like you say, listening to my clients. What are they liking? What are they not liking? What are they gravitating towards? There have been things that I put on my menu that nobody's ordered, and then I'm like, cool, I'm not gonna go there yet. And that's all right. I'm gonna put a pause on that, but what I might do the next week is maybe bring a little bit of that thing that nobody ordered and drop it off for free, right? And just be like, hey, give it a shot and see. And so it's really worked well in that sense.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Pricing is a big challenge. Pricing is a challenge for every entrepreneur, right? Because there's the cost-based pricing, and then there's the brand pricing, and so there's all these factors that go in, and really it's about the value that the customer sees.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, did you do any research to look at what competitors were charging for comparable meals?
Yeah, I did. Absolutely. And that's when it plays on your confidence a bit sometimes, right? When you start to look out and see what else is out there, because you see these really large chains that do meal deliveries, or those services where people will purchase that box of food that you then assemble yourself or whatever, and they're like, oh, it's $3 a meal, and I'm like, huh? There's no way I can do that. There's like no way. But the way that I can be competitive that I found is helpful is like, I'll drop food off to your door, bearing in mind I'm lucky enough to have a car. So, I deliver, that cost is included. So I try to be competitive in those ways, right? Plus you get somebody that's willing to listen to you, to make adjustments to your meal to a certain extent, right? Nothing too crazy, because it's really tough. I do cook in larger bulk orders for the most part, right? But yeah, it's been really interesting. And then just the overall cost of food in general, right? As we all know, it's starting to become completely inaccessible for many. And so that has been tough. It's been tough for people in the food industry. It's been tough for those that need to eat well, healthy and nutritious meals. So part of my mandate as a tiny business that I have going on is that I don't know why I'm referring to myself as we, but I am committed to ensuring that people have access to healthy meals. And so for every 10 meals purchased, I try to donate 3. And so often I'll have clients that will DM me or private message me, email me, and let me know, hey, you know what, I have a neighbor who's been struggling, or, what my daughter's teachers had a really tough year, or I know a family staying at Ronald McDonald House. Is there a way that you can drop off some meals? And I've been happy to do so, because life is hard. Life is really, really tough sometimes. It's challenging. And so it's important. It's important to do what we can for community and for each other. Yeah, and because it's a side hustle, right? It's like any penny that I can save from that business is it's a bonus, right? I'm in this fortunate, privileged position where I have a day job, and so I'm not relying on the funds from my business quite yet. So I'm able to play around a bit with that. So
Yeah, and you're putting kindness out in the world. It's lovely.
Try, right? Like you gotta.
Yeah. Just a question. About how many meals a week do you make?
Oh gosh, it can vary. It can vary. I think my first weekend I did 36 individual meals. So yeah, usually, like I say, because I have these regular clients, right? And because I can control how many people I'm supporting. So I'd say on a regular, I do, like I have 6 clients per week that I cook for. And I do one Friday lunch drop off to a business. And I have actually a client who, because the COVID restrictions have been lifted, has now started to entertain, but can't do much cooking themselves. And so I do one private group meal per week as well in the evening.
Wow.
So it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
So the natural question is, how do you balance life with your side hustle?
Good question. I'm busy and it's been draining, no word of a lie, right? It's tough. I think that it's forced me, as I mentioned in the beginning of this chat, to be more organized. So to really plan, to plan my time, to plan how I'm gonna space things out. So I'll use my evenings after work, for example, to prep whatever I can prep in advance, that type of thing. So it has been tough. And in terms of balancing family, I try to incorporate my family as much as possible, right? We're gonna go to this farmer's market. Let's all go together. So we're still spending quality time. I don't know how much my husband and 11-year-old like that, but whatever.
You don't ask them.
Yeah, no, they like it because they see I get super excited about that kind of stuff. So yeah, but it is a challenge. But like I say, it's forced me to be a bit more organized, to plan in advance. I am like an epic procrastinator. And so this has been really nice. It's been a challenge for me because I can't procrastinate because I just don't have the time.
Well, that raises the question of how far in advance do people order the meals?
Good question. So I try to put out a menu on the website and on social media every Monday or Tuesday evening. The deadline for ordering usually is Friday midday, and I do deliveries on Sundays. So it's not a huge turnaround in terms of time, but because I have that control factor down, right? I've got some regular clients. I'm able to communicate throughout the week and say, hey, like, what did you like? What do you think you're going to be ordering? And not seem too pushy, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's been good that way.
So you've got systems in place now.
Yes.
You've got procedures in place. And so the meal arrives on Sunday. It's best eaten on Sunday, or can it be saved for the week, or what's the story there?
Yeah, good question. So as much as possible, I try to make recipes that can last at least like 3 days, sometimes leftovers and things are better the next day, as we know, right? Curries, the longer they sit, the better they are, So that's also taken a bit of planning, right? In the beginning, I knew, I quickly learned you can't do big salads, really. Greens wilt unless you're forcing someone to eat them that first day, right? So how are you going to maximize your ingredients to really last and to still be fresh and to not be gross when you open up that container? There's things like, rice noodles, for example, they get really weird sometimes a day or two in. So how are you going to sauce things and spice things properly so that you don't get that weird effect that, where someone doesn't want to eat your food, So it really has been interesting.
Yeah, that's not a result you want.
No, you don't want any of that. You don't want any of that, but I think it helps. Like, I think with any side hustle, if you're picking your something you're passionate about, you're going to inherently have a certain idea as to how it works, right? So because I really like food and I grew up in a family that likes food, it's my comfort zone to a certain extent, right? And I think that's really important because it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. Of course, there's trial and error, but if you're excited about it and passionate about it, you're going to know a lot about it. And I think to just be able to trust your own intuition about things is really important too. It's just an important thing to roll with.
Yeah.
You are an expert, whether you think so or not, and it's something that I try to remind myself of a lot of the time, right? I have a lot of friends that are professional chefs in the city, and I'm like, oh gosh, like I don't have that title. I haven't worked in a crazy kitchen till 4 a.m. and I don't have the perfect, knife technique or whatever, but I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing because I've been a lifelong vegetarian and because I'm passionate about it. And I think that's important to keep in mind when you're going for your side hustle.
Yeah. Own your expertise.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, know it and own it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you've told us a lot about the business, but
Mhm.
what lessons have you learned that were really important that you learned along the way that was like, oh, I wasn't expecting that lesson, but now I've got that, or that really surprised you to learn, right? In terms like from a management perspective, that kind of
Mhm. I'd say just keep working at it. Like that's been about, I think at the maybe like 5-week mark, I kind of sat back and was like, nah, I'm good. This thing runs itself. It doesn't run itself. If you're not pushing and you're not promoting and you're not making connections, it won't run itself. It'll come to a grinding halt. So I think, letting people know that you're out there and what you do, making sure that you're staying kind of present and in people's minds is really important. I think especially in a food-based industry, there is a lot of competition, right? And so I think that for me was like, oh, you can't really relax, you gotta keep pushing. And so I think that's been a fairly important lesson as well. Yeah, so just continuing to focus on it. And that can be tough, right? It can be tough when it's a side hustle and you're feeling drained or there's other stuff happening in your life.
Yeah. I actually just wrote a piece on the blog at startupscarborough.com. Is that called, I don't know what it's called, but it's basically about rhythm and persistence.
Mhm.
Right? It's finding your rhythm and doing the work, right? And being persistent at it. And it's those two things that then come to momentum and kind of help your business take off.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And finding that rhythm and yeah, just not getting derailed from it, I think.
Yeah.
Which is really good to do as a side hustle. When you're passionate about it, hopefully you're not going to get too derailed.
Yeah. And for side hustle, it's really interesting because there's a difference between working in the business, which you're doing when you're making the food, and working on the business, which is what you're doing when you're promoting your business.
Absolutely.
Right? And trying to get that balance going for yourself can be a challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I found, perfect example, I think, was that one weekend I was really tired after cooking and delivering. And I thought, you know what? I'm not going to go the regular route that I do. So normally I publish on my website weekly. I publish the menu and I also use Instagram as well to communicate what the menu is. And that particular week I thought, you know what? I'm tired. Nobody reads my website anyway, as far as I thought. I'm not going to put the menu up on my website. I'm just going to put it up on Instagram. And that week, my sales were down. My sales were down because people were used to seeing my updated menu on my website. I thought no one really checked out my website, but I was wrong. And so it was just a great lesson to kind of say, hey, I have to be consistent because I actually have people out there that are relying on this consistent pattern and messaging, and they're incorporating it into their week, right? As well, which fortunate enough that they are. But it was really interesting to see that difference. I thought that wouldn't matter, and it did. So I learned, and now I do it both places.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's the persistence, right? And consistency, and they're like, yeah, for sure. So what's the best thing about having a side hustle?
I think I mentioned earlier, like for me, I'm excited about it. So I get to be creative. I came from a performing arts background. I was a dancer for many years and I stopped that and I didn't have a creative outlet. So for me, my side hustle happens to bring some creativity to my life that I don't have in my day-to-day, right? In my job, as a parent. So I think for me, that's been kind of the most exciting part. Sorry, I got distracted by a question that Tracy had in the chat.
Yeah, I was just checking that out too.
Yeah.
Want to make sure that we get it covered. But
yeah.
that's great though. I mean, it's really to see a small wee business born out of passion and watching it grow and not knowing where or how far you can take it.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
Who knows? I don't know. But I think it's nice because it is a side hustle. So if I fall flat on my face and it doesn't work out, then it's just another lesson learned, and if it takes off, that's great, and again, maybe it really takes off and I just can't balance both, or I can't quit my day job because I can't afford it, or I don't want to. And maybe I'll have to shut down, like I don't know. But the nice thing is I get to be creative and passionate about something that brings me joy each week, and I'm not relying on it for a main source of income, at least quite yet.
Yeah.
Food is hard. It's a tough, having run a business before in Kensington Market. It's a really, really tough business. It's a slog, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but it seems like you've found the balance there, which is great.
I think so. I hope so. It feels like it.
Yeah. So what's your website?
Okay, so such a good question. This is Tracy, you're highlighting a really interesting thing for me. So amongst me not paying money into my Wix site, it's a crazy website. So it's not like sidehustlecatering.com or anything easy like that. It's a crazy Wix site. I can bring it up and post it. Tracy, are you on Instagram at all?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
I assume so. And if not, she will be.
Not everybody is.
Oh, she is. Oh, look at that.
She's Gastro Traveler. What? Okay, Tracy, I'll be adding you if that's cool. I'll add you from my business account, and you can follow me back. That sounds exciting. Whatever you're about, that sounds great.
So that'll work. Okay, so that I think the next obvious question is, what's your Instagram handle?
Yeah, so it's just side hustle. Let me double check, right? I think I always feel like I give out the wrong one. I'm looking at my phone, guys. This is where we're at. I should have been prepared for this. You think?
It's all good. It's all good.
Oh yeah, that's it. Okay. Okay. So Side Hustle Catering Toronto. That's what I've got. You want me to put it in the chat? Sorry,
That'd be great.
I'm really used to doing this at work. I moderate Zoom chats all day long.
You're on the flip side of this now.
I know, right? It's like I work with you guys. Look at that.
I think it's time for other people to pop in with some questions if they have some.
No pressure, no pressure.
Yeah, so a reminder, if anybody does have a question, there's two ways you can post your question. Either you can use the raise hand function in Zoom, and again, just go into the more button with the three dots, go into reactions, and then hit the raise hand function, and then you'll pop to the top of the screen here, and you can ask Sarah your question, or as Tracy and looks like Tomas as well, a couple others. Please feel free to use the chat function in Zoom as well. And so maybe just as a couple of questions are queuing up, there was one that was sent to me privately, but as the questions start to queue up, I just want to touch on a couple of things that Sarah mentioned, key concepts that I thought were really exceptional, especially for those who are looking to start their own business. And the first one was that the notion of controlling your expenses and your revenues, right? A great way to grow your business in a very sort of reasonable, controlled way. And it's not just the expenses, but those revenues. Sarah, I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I'm sure if you started with 2,000 customers, you probably would have been overwhelmed, right?
Totally.
So, controlling your expenses, free website through Wix, $200 at the food services business, and just getting yourself up and going, because that's probably one of the hardest things is just starting. The second key concept I loved was that notion of marrying your passion with your business. You mentioned getting teary-eyed when you're seeing menus. And I think that that's such a fantastic demonstration of your passion and how that passion translates into your business, which translates into success. And the last thing you mentioned was that notion of being a learning process. You talked about the wilty greens, and I'm sure there's a good story around some salads that went a little sideways on you.
Mhm.
But that notion that thought that entrepreneurism isn't a destination where you just sort of arrive and put a flag up and say you're an entrepreneur. It really is a journey where you're constantly growing and evolving. And so a couple of key concepts there that I thought were fantastic. And so what questions, if anybody has them, a raise hand function or the chat. But one question that did come into me was around mentorship and support. And the question was if you have any mentors and how they've helped you.
Oh, such a good question. Mentors in the food industry? No, believe it or not, but now you're making me want one. I have a lot of there's a lot of chefs and cooks that I find inspiring. So that's been helpful, but nobody to turn to kind of to support or help with the business model necessarily. But again, I think that goes back to my own comfort level, and wanting to push myself and make it like, I don't know if you guys find this if you're thinking about a side hustle, but I find this is like part of a side hustle is that legitimacy piece and just having the confidence to just feel that your side hustle is legitimate. It's a thing, it's a real thing. And so for me, I think that that's really what's held me back in terms of the mentorship piece, which is interesting. But now after this call, I'm gonna start to search for someone. I have a lot of mentors in this world, for other aspects of my life, and it's really important to have one for a side hustle too, right? So yeah, absolutely. But I'd say, my parents are both, they've always run their own businesses. And so that's been helpful to see. They're different businesses. My dad's a filmmaker and my mom is a librarian. But they've hustled. And I think that's been helpful. They've hustled nonstop since the day I was born. And so just to have that example has been really, really helpful. So much so, yeah, I'm a bit of a workaholic, right? Like, why take on a side hustle when I have a really busy like full-time job? Don't know. But I think that part of their work ethic has rubbed off on me, and I really appreciated that.
Fantastic. And there was a question that just came in from Erin. It mentioned she's unable to find the webpage, so maybe you can sort of copy and paste it into the chat there, and we could get some links to it. But then also around special permits, if you had any permits for food preparation and delivery and whatnot.
Good question. So the food handler certificate, yeah, absolutely. That's just to cover my own bases, right? And to remind myself of safe food prep. I think for most of us that have been in work environments or office environments, the reminder of all the COVID safety procedures, those are adhered to in the kitchen as well. And then also I'm lucky enough to have people within my community that have commercial kitchens that aren't accessed by the public all the time. And so, that's been helpful as well. The reason why I've kept the business small is specifically because of that, because if it grows to a certain extent, as you know, there's an extra amount of scrutiny and licensing and everything that goes along with it. Not opposed to it at all, but I've kept my client circle small and within people that I know for that specific reason for now, until I'm able to balance it out and launch it in a larger way. So, but that's a really good question. Yeah, I can post the link. I'm just I shouldn't be scared to minimize the page. Let me just grab it for you and I can post it here.
Okay, fantastic. And there was another question that came in, and just wanted to know, I guess perhaps what you put in your food to make sure that you get those return clients. Is there anything that you put in there like that's somewhat addictive or that you'll really just love?
If I were my father-in-law, I'd repeat his his thing. I put love into everything that I make. Haha. I'm sure you guys have heard that before, but No, but I think that what's really important when people are exploring vegetarian food in general is flavor, right? You want to make sure that the flavors are somewhat recognizable. They're not too crazy, right? Like I try to incorporate one newer ingredient that somebody might not have been exposed to. and that's been helpful, but I try to do things that I think might be familiar to my clients as much as possible. And like I say, really just getting that feedback so that it helps with the menus the next week. So I know where people are headed, what flavor profiles they like. But I think, I'm just like a cook, No. I think that helps. I think it really helps to be confident in the product that you're delivering, right? I always got those questions like, how do you get your protein? What do you eat every day? How do you not get bored? I'm not a stick at all, which is people's like idea of what a vegetarian or a vegan might be. And so I've challenged kind of what people think a vegetarian is. And so I just really like to share like my way of eating with people. That's pretty much what it is, right? Like vegetarian food can be interesting. You don't always need meat. And I'm not at all political about it. I know there's a lot attached to it as well, but that's not where I come from with it. It really is just, sharing the way that I like to eat and hoping that it lands with people. And I've been fortunate enough that it has, which is good. But I do use a lot of bold flavors. I like things that have flavor. That aren't super bland, and that's helpful sometimes.
Yeah, and the fact that it's freshly prepared, it's a bit corny perhaps to say, prepared with love, but that notion of it being freshly prepared is the love, right? And it's fresh, it's bold flavors, it's something more than just that packaged item off the grocery store shelf, and that that comes through in what you're when you're cooking on the Friday, Saturday for a Sunday delivery.
Yeah, and I do base a lot of my recipes on things that are familiar to me, my family, my friends. I try to incorporate meals that are from all different backgrounds, like culturally, which I think is also nice. It provides that variety. So no specific special ingredients other than love, passion, whatever you might want to call it.
Yep.
But yeah, I find it helpful.
And there's another question in the chat. This one from Rosa, and I love kind of the where Rosa's going with this question. And there's a really kind of big piece in here, and that is she talks about how she's got an idea and she's just not sure how to get it off the ground. And so maybe I'll kind of expand on that, Sarah. And can you just talk about you mentioned you started it this summer, your business this summer. But why not last summer? Like, what was it that was kind of holding you on the ground, and what did you do to overcome it and get it off the ground?
Yeah, I mean, I think the timing for me worked in the sense that I was home. Like I was home a lot, and that actually did work in my favor. So when COVID hit, we all moved into working from home, and it allowed me time in a sense. It took away my commute every morning and every night, and it allowed me some time and some space to think creatively that I didn't normally have in my day-to-day job, right? So that was really good. And then, like I say, I didn't really go looking for it. Like I wasn't looking for a way to make money necessarily on the side at that point. It's been a really nice bonus. But I did fall back into food again. And that was really just based on the need that was out there. And I think with any side hustle, if you're identifying a niche or a need, it's important, right? Does your passion fill a niche somewhere out there? And how can you capitalize on it? And it just so happened that like plant-based was like the thing. A lot of people are talking about plant-based and vegetarian food. And I was just like I said in the beginning, well, that's the way that I eat. So hang on, how can I use that? And also I might add too, the thing that I find interesting about the way that I eat, a lot of vegetarians eat, is that I've never felt the need to eat like soy-based products that feel or look like meat. I don't fully understand that concept. I understand it for people that eat meat that just want to make a plant-based switch, a healthier switch. But for me, I had a veggie burger on my menu a few weeks ago, and that was like a tofu and veggie-based patty. It wasn't meant to be like meat, because I think it's great to expose people to different palates and different flavors, and that things don't have to have that same texture to get the same protein content or the same, the flavors will be different because you're eating plants. are gonna be different. So yeah, it's been an interesting ride.
Fantastic. And you mentioned $200 is what you think you spent to kind of get started.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, you're not going looking for loans from banks or anything like that to get the $200 to get yourself up and started. But what kind of was your sort of startup, and not to get too personal, but your cost? Was it, that $200, was that you're up and running and now you've got some money coming in, or did you have to spend a little bit more? Like what do you think it kind of cost you to get your business and your dream up and going?
So I would say like within the first week, that was probably my initial startup cost, because I started small too, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't push myself to go beyond my scope. I knew the money that I had to deal with, the ingredients that I had to buy, and I'm very careful about my menu planning as well, right? To maximize, the ingredients and also how I'm balancing what I'm charging. So yeah, but I think as the weeks went on, I've had to invest a little bit more here and there, and I've drawn on personal savings, which isn't necessarily the way to go. I know my husband probably isn't pleased with that, but he's supportive. But yeah, I wouldn't say that my startup costs have been crazy. Oddly enough, what I really found the most expensive was containers. Holy cow, they ate up a huge amount of my profit. It was driving me nuts, like nuts. So, and I didn't really think about that, when I was thinking about delivering these individual meals to people. And then you're like, oh gosh, and then your head goes, you're like, the environmental impact and the this and then that. So yeah, it's been an interesting learning curve. But I would say, I'm careful about my account. I started up my business account. I only draw from that account for my ingredients. I try to stick to it for my gas and all that stuff. So I can start to, I'm really bad at math. I dropped math in grade 10. The second that I could drop math, I did. And so it's been a learning process too, right? I've had to be like, get comfortable with numbers again, get comfortable with planning. And really, I'm kind of working a little bit backwards in the sense, which I think is okay because it's my comfort zone, right? I'm working backwards in a sense. I'm kind of playing catch up and figuring out what's worked and hasn't worked after the fact, but then adjusting as I move forward. So it really has been, a lot of learning
Yeah,
in a short
and
amount of
growing
time.
small, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's a real misconception among people that, to start a business you need $20,000 or $50,000 or something, huge, and you need angel investors and you need a bank and you need all this and that. And so I love to hear what you're talking about: starting small, controlling your expenses, growing slowly, and really kind of investing and reinvesting in your business.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think to like capitalize on the free things, right? Like Instagram is free, the Wix, I just posted my site. You can see it's hard to find it. It's going to be hard to find my website unless you're copy and pasting that, which, I'll look at later. But yeah, like I think to capitalize on the things that are free, right? And for that, it's connection, it's word of mouth, and it's not being afraid to ask for things, right? Like with my clients, when I'm dropping off food, I say, hey, like, don't forget to let your friends know. I'd really appreciate it, and just to put yourself out there and just be like, no, like I'm doing you a solid, you do me a solid, it's an exchange.
yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
we are running just a little bit tight on time, but there was one last question, and just around that notion of it. It's much less expensive to keep a client than to find a new one. And what type of discounts do you offer, or do you, for permanent and returning clients?
So I thought about it, and I don't offer any discounts. I just don't, because I think I'm lucky enough to have clients. I don't charge taxes quite yet because I'm small. I'm still small enough, right? So that's something to keep in mind, right? Beyond a certain point, you're charging HST. So there's those things that for sure. But I purposely keep it small for now, right? So I don't necessarily offer discounts to repeat customers, but I'll do little nice things here and there. I'll partner with other local businesses, friends that I might have in the industry, for example. So you might get, a local cookie delivery along with your weekly delivery, or I've got a friend of mine who's an amazing chef in Toronto who has his own line of hot sauce. So maybe I'll get a bottle of that here and there. So just gestures of appreciation, I think, go a really long way when you're trying to create a business and when you can't necessarily afford to offer crazy discounts, right? That it's a tough thing to feel confident in charging what your labor and what your product is worth. Like that's been a learning curve too, like I mentioned. But I think to stick to that is really important because the competition out there is stiff. But if you're providing quality and a smile, it means a lot. It means a lot. So
fantastic. That's wonderful. So I think that'll wrap up the Q&A. Sarah, thank you very much. And Janice, back to you.
That's fantastic, Sarah. I want to mention to everyone that on the blog on StartUpScarborough.com, there is actually a post about free apps. I think there's about 8 or 10 free apps that are out there that, to make life a lot easier as a side hustler, or as an entrepreneur or small business owner, however you define yourself. So Sarah, thank you. I mean, that was really generous the way you spoke and shared your experiences with us. I certainly, truly appreciate it. So thank you very, very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited that you found me. I'm excited to be further involved. Like you might see me out there at some community events, definitely a community gardener too. You want someone to get their hands dirty in the soil, let me know. It looks really fun. So I'd be happy. I have a long history of volunteering and more than happy to jump in and support where I can.
That sounds great. Which raises, what Suman mentioned is that there's the launch of Urban Agriculture Week. So 3595 St. Clair Avenue East this Saturday. So that would be great. Our next webinar is on October 5th. And it's for Small Business Week. So we've got a small business expert panel for you. So Tuesday, October 5th at 7 p.m. again. So mark your calendar, everybody. And if you have a business idea, a side hustle you want to develop or anything like that, go to StartUpScarborough.com and there's a link there to apply. And just give us a little bit of information and we'll get in touch. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And that's it for this week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, Sarah. Thank you.
Bye.